if you're educated in technology at some kind of fundamental level, whether it's Linux, whether it is programming. So let's take, for example, Linux. If you have fundamental understanding of, the Linux file structure, for example, permissions, networking, bash, shell, the terminal, how your package manager works, things like that. So for a desktop level, or of course system administration, so you know how the kernel does certain things, how like init systems, firewalls. If you have that fundamental understanding, things like ChatGPT are obviously like a tool, or an AI can be like an aid to your learning, to finding out some information, because fundamentally you know enough about your system. You just need that additional support. And like additional support, the advice might not be right. Okay. So if you were getting some instruction from somebody might make a mistake, because particularly if it's not cross-referenced on a forum, for example, nobody's responded to confirm or deny that that bit of advice is right. AI has essentially the same fundamental issues. You're getting information, you're getting the support to your question, but if you don't have fundamental understanding, you won't perhaps understand that the command it's offering to you deletes, in some cliche way, your home drive, or your home partition, or your home directory, right? And it's the same with programming. If you do not have the fundamental understanding of even the basics of programming, maybe algorithms, and again infrastructure, then AI is going to effectively keep you ignorant, keep you that sort of learned helplessness, if you hear that term like the Primogen uses, and unknowing, not knowing what's happening, particularly if you're using some kind of critical system, some kind of security led system or customer based system, or it's a business. Vibe coding without knowing fundamental principles of programming, maybe the programming language you're in, the infrastructure, you're probably setting yourself up for failure, upsetting a lot of people, including yourself. So it's like anything. AI is obviously on the hype train. The investment that big tech business has put into it means that they're going to push it as a one-shot solution for everything in your life. Everybody knows that's clearly not the case. Everybody knows that it's an input-output machine. The output looks spookily real, but of course the reality is it's just taking basically a huge internet search engine and dumping it as like a weight system, like a neural net, right? It's taking all that information and giving you the best it thinks, the best result it thinks you need from all these weights, right? So really, it's what everybody's always said it's been for a long time now. AI is just a prediction machine that might be right 50% of the time, 70% of the time, 80% of the time. It's just that unless you have fundamental understanding on the subject or the question you're putting to it, you're not going to know if it's right or not, and that could cause huge issues. So personally, how I feel about AI on any and every subject is that it's probably best just to do the research yourself, do the fundamental understanding yourself, and hey, if you do need AI, you're going to be in a much better place to use ChatGPT without it giving you like a false positive, not false positive, giving you false information, giving you a security issue in technology, for example, doing something nefarious, right? That's how I feel about it. I asked it about eBay fees. They were out of date, so I got them from eBay, informed it. It apologized and acknowledged. Well, that's it, right? You know, say you are running a business, and as an example, you need to know shipping fees. Imagine if you're doing that at scale, because assume now that businesses are going to use AI as a replacement for you know, many roles, which could include in the future, you know, getting shipping fees, getting information, maybe putting that into a database, putting that into financials, and the next thing you know, your financials all wrong because eBay's charged you certain shipping fees at scale, and your ChatGPT answer set you up for failure, and now you've got, you know, a huge miscalculation that could, you know, harm or sink the business. Especially, say, if you're a small business, even, you know, you imagine now that many small businesses probably use AI to some degree, being an assumption. Plenty are going to be using AI for information, and again, imagine if you think the smartest thing to do might be, as a small business, save the time going through the documentation of eBay, asking ChatGPT, and it gives you 10-year out-of-date information on shipping fees or fees. And then very quickly you realize after many orders, you've got, you know, a financial discrepancy, maybe a deficit, and you're not going to be able to pay your bills. I don't know. Maybe it will sink a business sooner rather than later. I know it's a very dramatic example, but in principle, I think we can all agree that, you know, without fundamental understanding in critical areas, in places where it doesn't matter, it's not as important, right? If there's not some critical system or not some critical bit of information that could affect, you know, somebody financially or something else, then maybe it doesn't matter. Although probably in principle, it's not good practice without fundamental understandings. I don't know. Personally, whenever I've used AI, I just kind of disappointed by it. Yep, if you want something done right, do it yourself. Sadly, I think that is the answer to so much in life. Unless you can get the verifiable information somewhere out of the answer an AI gives you, or something, you know, again, it's that thing. You probably wouldn't assume a stranger would give you, say, always accurate information. You'd always be skeptical. I think that's the thing. You don't assume that everything somebody tells you is correct. You might assume they're giving their best effort. I mean, like now, I could be talking to you on AI, and you could assume that everything I've just said is 100% accurate. You know, the details, obviously, I don't really know, you know, the LLMs, you know, construction. I don't know training data, training models. All I see is the outputs from the inputs, right? All the magic that happens in between. Obviously, I'm not an engineer, so I'm not going to know this. Maybe many of you aren't engineers, so you don't really know. A lot of engineers, it seems, who do AI know the technical aspects to, you know, put training data together, train a, you know, train an LLM, train an AI on these models. To some degree, but maybe even they don't have, you know, absolute understandings. You sort of hear this, it's a black box. And that's the thing. The assumption is from companies and from tech journalism that AI is some kind of magic that, you know, is going to revolutionize the world. And then the people might draw assumptions to that as what it says is infallible, right? Can't be incorrect, can't be wrong, until it does go wrong. Because what was that thing? There was that article that's, sorry, an article. There was a study, I think, in the past year that said that 95% of businesses that were asked about AI said that AI hadn't effectively given them any financial return. So, for example, I imagine businesses that maybe had less staff, less people on the books, and other staff were expected to use AI, or AI was in some kind of infrastructure, effectively didn't create a financial return. Now, on the corollary, I don't know if it was actually a financial burden. I imagine if you're using something like ChatGPT at some scale, or even if you're, I don't know, an engineering company, a program, you know, a tech company that's using it, you're going to burn through those tokens pretty quick and spend a lot of money. So I don't even know how the financials actually end up. Just that certainly at the moment, it seems that AI isn't, you know, a net benefit to companies financially. Hi, Ahmed. And so it'll be interesting to see if AI investment is a bit like the dot-com boom and bust of the early 2000s, when, don't know if how many of you are old enough to remember, but or have read about it, but the wave of internet domains or companies that were using the internet as their business model exploded, and a lot of companies listed themselves on the stock market, making a big point of being a dot-com company, an internet company, or internet services, or having some affiliation with the internet. And almost overnight in the late 2000s or mid 2000s, the was it S&P or the NASDAQ, whatever stock market, effectively crashed and wiped out what trillion plus dollars of internet companies, and so many folded and went under. Have a look on YouTube. There's some interesting documentaries about it, and I do remember at the time it's quite a dramatic thing.